Hello and welcome to With Thunderous Applause, a podcast where two friends get together to talk about the ideas and events that will shape our uncertain future. I am your host, Steve, along with my co host, Zach. What is up?
Nothing much. I planted my last plants over the weekend, and I couldn't be happier because
Awesome.
now it's the 3 W's of gardening: watering, waiting, and weeding.
Clever. I like it.
Thank you. I made it up.
I also like your background
Oh, yeah.
today. They took our gerbs. Have you
Gerbs.
seen? I don't think it's the newest season because I think they delay before they put it up on HBO Max. So the new season is airing on Comedy Central, and then they put the older seasons on a streaming service.
Yeah.
Um,
Comedy
but
Central used to
anyway,
have its own streaming service.
but I know it's got to be pretty new, actually. Never mind, they might host new episodes there because it's really apropos to what's happening. Like we were just watching a recent episode. Speaking of, they took her gerbs, and then subsequent storylines where Mr. Garrison is basically Trump. And
Yeah,
he just like he runs for president because he wants to fuck all the Mexicans.
yeah.
Like, and then realizes how impractical it is to fuck all the Mexicans because it's a lot of Mexicans. You can't fuck them all.
No.
And it's fucking hilarious. And he's just like, I don't want to be president. I was just doing this because I was pissed off or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, now he's got a boyfriend named Rick. And in one of the newer episodes, they like go on vacation. And he's like, no, I swear to God, Rick, I'm not doing it. I put that behind me or whatever. And then you find out he's sneaking out at night to go to like MAGA swag stores to sell like Trump stuff or like Garrison stuff, right?
Yeah,
And he's going and he's rallying. And so he's like addicted to rallying, and he's like sneaking around behind his boyfriend's back to like go do rallies. And then people are like, oh, come on, Mr. President, you're still my president and all this stuff. So it just made me think of that because God damn it. They really provided an excellent critique of modern American politics throughout their run, right? Like,
yeah.
but really, the Garrison stuff was just like this was just like, yeah, like just saying obscene shit. Like, I don't know. Yeah,
You got a garden by the pussy. Oh wait, no, that was the actual president.
Yeah, that was the actual president. I mean, alternatively, the president that was elected is a hair sniffer, creeping his own right.
Hey, everybody's got their kink
And a rapist.
Eh?
So, or many credible.
Seems like a prerequisite for politics these days.
Yeah, for the most part. And then, like, yeah. Did you hear about that story of the no, maybe let's not talk about that because I don't have all the details. But basically, like, in some police department in Texas, like there was this like dispatcher that was like having physical relationships with like multiple officers, and all of those officers knew that other officers were fucking her too. And so she was just like, yeah, these are all the dudes I fuck.
Yeah.
But they were like arranging it on work time and stuff, so they all got in trouble. But I just thought it was funny.
It was like, oh, you should go over to this location.
Well, there was in that was a story that came out, I think, earlier.
It was a while ago, maybe
last year, yeah. But there was a recent one. I think it was fairly recent that there was the drug enforcement component of a local police department. They found out that like they were smuggling drugs, or it was like a police.
Oh yeah.
It was a police union rep that was like the leader of like a drug smuggling ring. I think that was in the Bay Area.
Yeah, that shit happens all the time.
This shit happens all the time. All right, today we are talking about. What are we talking about? Oh, California. Speaking of California, we're talking about why people are leaving the state, because it's something that gets thrown around in the media a lot. And that's what we like to do here, is talk about our future. We are Californians, so this is close to home, literally.
Yep.
But, you know, we're always constantly talking about trends and future possibilities and all this stuff. So, and we're also always eager to dig into data about things that are considered common knowledge and well understood, but like the general public are just being kind of fed a particular narrative. And so what we like to do is go in and see if the narrative has any merit.
Statistics is a lot more art than science.
Well, yeah, and I always try and remind people of that phrase. I don't know who's credited with saying it first, but that there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Statistics are essentially a lie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I
And
mean,
sorry, go ahead.
I got done with my statistics class in college, and somebody was like, "So what'd you think?" And I was like, "It's the art of lying with numbers."
Yeah.
Thank you.
And really, if you're into maps and stuff and like data visualization, like various tools for digital or rather visualization of data,
Mm.
um, like it, like there's so many things that go into that. Like, where are you setting the threshold? What's the methodology
Yeah,
for how you get to that and make that determination? And then, like, so you say, oh my God, crime is so bad in California. But if you look at a chart that goes back 30 or 40 years, 50 years, like crime is been fairly stable for the last couple decades. And that was after severely decline or significant declines across the 80s and early 90s. And it's not like it bounced back.
right, right.
So a lot of that just becomes like perceptions of crime. And I might have mentioned it in a previous podcast, but when I was running for office, I had a criminal justice professor, PhD, on to discuss unhoused issue and stuff. And he kind of pointed out, and I may be repeating myself here, but I think it's important to point out that he's just like, well, the perception of crime goes up because cops are pulling over and talking to unhoused folks on the street, and then everybody that drives by is like, oh my God, we have a crime problem. Look,
Right,
the
right.
cops have someone handcuffed on the side of the road. We don't know what their crime was. We don't know if they got charged. We don't know if they were
Yeah, we
just
don't.
sitting there and the cops were talking to them. We just perceive crime by police contact with individuals.
Yeah, and just a quick, look up, like, crime is down from the '80s at the very least,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
down
Interestingly
from
enough, I think
2004.
that decline
Hmm.
corresponds to lead loss because
Oh, yeah, taking lead
air
out of paint and
quality
gas and
issues.
all that stuff. Yeah,
They took the lead out of gasoline, and then fucking
yeah,
crime rates around the fucking country just went. Pew.
yeah.
Imagine that.
You don't stupefy your own people, and they don't
But yeah,
commit
crime
crimes.
is not as bad as it has been, and we have more people than we did 40 years ago.
Right,
Right? The per capita crime rate. I guess maybe that doesn't really matter because it's a per capita rate, but like
right, right.
we do have more people, um, and the per capita rate is down. So
Wait, crime is down. We funded the police to extremes, so clearly overfunding the police is working.
that's right.
Yeah, okay, good. Just want to make
I
sure.
think a local politician pointed out one time and pissed a lot of people off because they want to believe that like every fucking like that 65-year-old homeless lady that they saw pushing a cart is like a murderer or a child kidnapper
Mm,
or a thief or whatever, right? Like they want to believe that. And so one of the local politicians who's no longer in office um, was kind of pointing out, he's like, no, I'm literally looking at the department's crime statistics, and the only crime category that increased was domestic violence. In this is early COVID and after
oh,
the campfire too, where a
and
lot of
a
people,
rising number of police with a rising number of domestic violence cases.
those are also correlated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh God, what's his name? Maybe we can do a thing on it on Thursday or something. But one of the YouTube channels that does good kind of like mini docs. It was not Primo Radical because he does interviews. It was I forget the name of the channel, but I'll bring it up and we'll talk about it Thursday. But he just did like his most recent video was about uh, cops and domestic violence.
Oh yeah.
And it was good. Lots of statistics, lots of nuanced conversation about the whys and the hows, right? And how they're basically allowed to do it, but also how like there's not really a lot of checks in it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
and that it most likely goes underreported, but it was something like 60%. Because it's like 45%. So like basically 1 in 2 police officers fucking hits their wives or kids. And
Yeah.
it's probably higher than that because there are many women who would not report that. Because who do you report it to? His buddies?
The police.
Right? Like,
Got to call in the
anyway,
county sheriff. I don't know.
right. Yeah. And even then, no, they're all buddies, man, because they
Yeah.
all fucking whatever. It's just a cesspool of corruption. Let us see. Let us get started. Do you have any initial thoughts? So maybe let's start there. What are some of the things that you've heard?
Well,
I took
California
yours.
has all the cities that are sanctuary cities, and so there's more immigrants, and they're taking their jobs and forcing good Americans to leave California and seek jobs elsewhere. That's what
That's
I've heard in
interesting.
the past. Yeah. I've heard that California is unfair to businesses and wants them to, I don't know, pay fucking taxes. And so they're like, well, we can go somewhere else and not pay taxes. So we're going to go there. And they go to Texas and uh, Nevada. I know personally, my brother moved to Miami because California was, quote, too liberal.
Yeah,
Like,
you hear that a lot, right?
yeah,
Oh, it's
even though
all
like
this
half,
California.
yeah,
Like, as a communist, like I wish California exhibited just a little bit of communism.
right. I wish California was as they described it, because in reality, it's about 50%. It's a pretty close 50-50 split. It just,
Political ideology.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 100%.
It just happens that all the people along the coast are like way more, liberal, because that's what you get. Big cities, it tends to enhance your chance of being liberal. But then, like, you get even like 20 minutes away from the coast, and you got a whole bunch of people who are wealthy and concerned about their land and their wealth being maintained and all that stuff. And so they're like, I don't want none of that commie shit. You're going to take my toothbrush, etc. um, that's pretty much all I've heard. Oh, housing costs. Like,
Yeah,
that's what's driving me out. I'd love to find a place that's cheaper, but it's hard to find a place that's cheaper and not garbage.
right. I was actually doing some research on just kind of getting a feel for like what the situation is because there was a drive-by shooting like a couple blocks from my house the other
Mhm.
day over the weekend. And I don't feel at risk because I got no reason, I got no beef with anybody. No one's gonna drive by and shoot up my house, right? Like
Right. Well, the
I'm not
worry is they drive by a neighbor and you catch a straight bullet.
right. Or more importantly, and this is kind of the way I framed it to my family, it's a concern to me because if there's a perception of armed people running around, it's a lot more likely that I will be shot by a police officer
Yeah.
because they're all on edge.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
realize there's so much
to
gun
get hit
violence
by a
out
stray
there.
bullet from a cop trying to kill a hobo that was, drinking a tall can of malt liquor, you
Hmm.
know, because that's what they do. They fucking murder people.
Yep.
At any rate, yeah, so I was looking into some stuff and and find that it's really kind of perceptions. And I was looking at all number of factors, but you're right on the housing cost issue and finding good housing. Because one of the things that came up, this is my point, was that like Chico, like everybody that rated Chico as a bad place to live,
Hmm.
cited fucking slumlords. And
Yeah.
they're like, the city does nothing to control the quality of housing.
Yeah. I paid $730 a month for a 380 square foot studio apartment that used to be a hotel.
Yeah.
It's like on the edge of town, not near anything.
There was a taco truck.
That's true. There was a taco truck and a gas station with overpriced everything.
Yeah. But the taco truck, so it's not in the middle of no, it's not far away from
True.
everything.
I was
But
able
you're
to
right.
survive thanks to tacos and burritos.
And you were right next to Basque Norte too.
That's
If
not
you could
affordable.
afford one of the more expensive restaurants in town.
Yeah, it's like $90 for like a 7-course meal or something like that.
Maybe next time you come, I'll have to break out my Visa card. Just get you fucking
Rachel's been wanting to go back to Basque Norte. Fresno
you
doesn't
don't.
have as
I've
many
never
like
been.
good little restaurants. Oh, it's delightful.
Oh, I've heard it's really good.
Yeah,
Like the food is fantastic. The menu changes all the time,
yeah.
and
I
they
will say,
serve family style, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
just bring you platters of shit,
yeah.
kind of like a Chinese restaurant when you
Like
order family style.
basically, like everybody orders their main course, and then everything else is family style. But man, living next to that place, just stepping outside, the smell was great.
You're like,
Like,
prime ribs
yeah,
on the menu tonight.
exactly.
Ooh, it smells like they're doing crab.
Yeah, smells like gentrification.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, tons of slumlords. So yeah, housing costs is another thing I've heard. And much of what we're going to talk about today is about kind of economic conditions.
Yeah,
Um, but I have heard that it's because Democrats control the state. As someone who is on the left side of the political spectrum, it pisses me off that we don't have any ideological diversity in our government. And
right.
it pisses me off that they've taken steps, those in power that want to maintain power have taken steps to make it harder to campaign and to get elected if you're not part of a major party.
Right.
Like they passed
Yeah.
all sorts of rules. They're like, oh, this will make it more fair. And then like you give it a decade and you're like, oh, wait a second. No, this was intentional to sideline third parties,
Yeah. Yeah. It's always the goal to get it down to two parties, which is effectively one.
which is effectively one. And the right wingers here, they just play to all the culture issues and that's why culture issues nationally too get so much fucking
Right.
airtime is because there's no economic difference. So it
Yeah.
has to be all cultural issues where they draw their distinctions.
Well, and I always hear like, oh, the Republicans are doing all the identity politics because they don't have any ideas for governing anymore. And it's like, well, neither do the fucking Democrats. Like they get
They,
power and they don't make any good changes. Like,
well, no, but Republicans get shit done when they're in power.
right. It's just
They
not
got their
good.
big fucking tax cut,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And that seems to be the main difference. Is it seems to be that the Democrats exist purely to appease people and make them think things are going to get done. And then after 4 or 8 years, they lose power and it switches over and things get more, conservative and less good for the average working person.
Yeah.
And we lap it up. Num, 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 num.
That's
Mm,
why we talked about balkanization and the fetishization of nonviolence. And I don't I don't see us reforming our way out of this shit.
no.
And there is this kind of pattern like to human societies and they change, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's part of what I was going to argue today is that like people move, dude. Demographics change.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that like, people left the east this south. I mean, obviously for good reason, right? There was a good push factor for sharecroppers and stuff after the Civil War to go north, right? Or to the Midwest.
Mhm.
But like there are cities that were built and died all over this fucking country and all over the world.
Yeah.
I think I gave you the example of in Bagram, you could literally see an old Bronze Age city that was just ruins, but they
Mhm.
just built a city like fucking a few clicks, like, in a different direction. Like
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that didn't quite work out.
the valley's been inhabited continuously for 10,000 years or whatever.
Yeah, that's what always gets me, is they're like, "Hey, let's try a city." Ah, that failed. Okay, let's go back to our farms. And then 100 years later, "Hey, I have a great idea. It's called a city." And you're like, "Shit."
Yeah. Or they're aware of cities, but like, yeah, it's just the political and economic conditions
Yeah.
are very particular for that. And California has a whole host of things, and we're not going to touch on all of them, but economic factors are a big push out of the state.
Right.
And so let's really define the push pull factors for migration first. And then as we go through the rest of the clips, we can kind of use that framework for discussing various kinds of bullet points that have been established, none of which are because it's a communist government, and none of them are it's because California is too woke. People
Yeah.
do mention taxes.
Yeah, yeah.
People
And
mention
and the
education.
wokerati.
Yeah, but primarily it's cost of living and cost of housing.
And so did you want Mr. Sin
Spoiled.
first, then California Insider?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Sin.
Oh, wait. I put California Insider first
You did, yeah.
on my list. Yeah, let's go with that one
Okay.
first. Sorry.
All right. No worries.
We want to talk to you about the trend that people are leaving California. We lost a congressional seat this round when the US Census happened. Some people argue that there is no trend of people leaving California.
Now, let me tell you how many people have left California more than have come in. Since 2000, 3.1 million more people have left California to move to one of the other 49 states or DC. People are being forced out, by the cost of living, essentially. It's no secret that California house prices are way out of sight, terribly unaffordable. It is so bad that, for example, in the San Francisco metropolitan area, you need about $315,000 worth of annual income to qualify on a conventional mortgage at 10% to buy the median priced house in that area.
We want to
So, I mean, that's just a kind of good summary. And he points
Yeah.
to the economics because when you hear it in a lot of right-wing spaces, like people who don't understand it, you hear the things that we mentioned, right? Like, oh, it's because it's controlled by liberals, or like your brother. He's like, oh, but your brother wasn't saying like, oh, the state is controlled by liberals. He just said, no, there's too many people who think different than me.
Basically, yeah. He was tired of that and decided to leave.
Which is fair. And anybody's entitled to want to be in a space that they want to be in. I think a lot of that is perceptions driven by shit you're seeing on the internet. Because if we didn't have this ability to like compartmentalize ourselves, my parents are doing it too. That's why I said if we didn't have this ability to put these blinders on and only see the bad things, right? And only see that the grass is greener on the other side, right? Then we would be forced to interact with our neighbors. You were going to say something?
Oh, just being to piggyback off of that, being forced to actually interact with other human beings that are real instead of, as you said earlier prior to the video, a caricature.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, my parents are doing it too, and it's really distressing because like diversity is what made us California, man. It's the whole kind of creative destruction mindset that like made Silicon Valley, which I'm not defending. It's corrupt. There's all sorts of issues with it. It's just a subsidy dumpster, et cetera, et cetera. But we cannot deny that there is a particular way of thinking here that is vastly different from a place like Florida, right?
Right.
And I don't really know Florida. I've never been there, but all I know is the caricature, right?
Yeah.
Florida.
You could speak on Texas a bit.
I could, and Texas is another good example because the reality is I think that people build these places up in their minds as being like perfect places. And I'll throw one example out that'll kind of piggyback on some stuff that we haven't gone over yet. But sure, Texas doesn't have a state income tax, but guess what? Their property taxes are like twice as much as they are here.
Yeah.
And when you talk about education in California being shitty, well, maybe that's because we fucking cap our property taxes, right?
Yeah.
And all sorts of other things that we can talk about in a bit, but it's just those places aren't perfect, right?
Mm-hmm. No
Remember
places, yeah.
all the people that got fucked when there were floods, and then Texas is like, no, we don't really have rules for that.
Yeah.
You don't have any protections because we believe in freedom. In your freedom to get absolutely fucked through no fault of your own, while the people that have the wealth and the resources have the protection against getting fucked. So it's just this constant like, sure, I mean, some people find it exhilarating or are risk takers or are willing to be entrepreneurs, right? And buy into all that bullshit. And so they might take a chance of moving, but generally speaking,
it's not a cheap endeavor, so you better be damn sure it's what's for you.
Right. And also, like, I mean, it would make sense if you had family there. I think your brother had family there, right? His wife's family.
Yes. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, they had the help.
You have a support network to land in, but some people are like, my parents, oh, I'm going to move to Idaho. Who do you know in Idaho?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my deceased aunt's grandson still lives there. It's like, yeah, but you don't talk to him. Like,
Right.
you know,
That's
move
nobody
up
to you.
far away from your kids and your grandkids for what? Because California has too many liberals. You're fucking crazy. And my parents are, I think we mentioned this before. My parents are constantly complaining about taxes. And it's like, bro, I pay 4 times the property taxes you do almost. A
Mhm.
little less than that, maybe 3.5 times.
Yeah.
But considerably more property taxes. And you know what is not on my list of things I have a problem with in California? My fucking property taxes.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just don't see what they get from taxes, directly. And so they think that they're just all bad. And it's like, no, we have some decent shit, that's provided.
Well, yeah, and I think that in a lot of ways there is a lot of government waste and there
Yeah.
is a lot of problems going unsolved. And so then people are like, fuck, why the fuck am I paying taxes? Like if we turned around and we're like, holy shit, people got mental health care, they got a there's no the trash
Right.
gets fucking picked up, there's no fucking hobos everywhere, like people have access to like, addiction recovery services, and our education is good and you can go to college for super fucking cheap, right? Like we have all sorts of organic produce available in markets and
Yeah.
farmers markets. If we had all of that, we'd probably be like, yeah, dude, my tax burden is fine, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's why I've heard in the past people are like, I would never want to live in Europe. The taxes are so high. And it's like, and there's so many guarantees though. You don't have to worry about so many things. You don't have to think like, my toe hurts. Well, I don't want to go to the doctor because I can't afford it. And then you find out later on you have gout or something like that and they have to cut your foot off.
Dude, remember I almost died from a medical issue I thought was acid reflux. I
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
shit for fucking years until like it got so bad I could barely move, and the fucking diagnostic imaging doctor was like, yeah, okay, so we're gonna schedule you for surgery because like this could go at any time and you could
Right.
die.
Yeah.
Like this is killing you.
Yeah.
And I had no idea because I was just like, oh fuck, man, doctors are so fucking expensive. I'll just
Mhm.
get another bottle of Tums.
And all over the United States, it is health insurance is a ridiculous endeavor. You basically pay a shit ton of money just to get told no when you actually need something. Like, oh, it doesn't cover that, or oh, it does cover it, but you have to pay the first $5,000. I'm sorry, I don't have $5,000. Like,
Right, precisely.
yeah,
You got to put up $5,000 before they fucking cover anything, and you're like, what is 45% of Americans don't have $500?
$500. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, let's go ahead and talk about the push and the pull factors here.
yeah.
When we're looking at migration and the move of people and the spread of ideas, we have to talk about push factors and pull factors. They're kind of what it sounds like. Push factors are things that push people out of an area. They make it so they no longer want to be there anymore, and they want to move to a different location. We could also even look at this for jobs and different things within your community. Something that is going to make you feel unwelcome, well, you're going to probably want to leave then. Push factors are things that are not welcoming. This could be poor economic conditions, a lack of opportunity, war or political oppression, or just oppression from your neighbors or people in the area. These are things that cause us to no longer want to be in a certain location. And because of that, then we decide to leave. So that's a push factor. Now, pull factors are a little bit different. Pull factors are what would attract someone to an area. A pull factor makes you want to move to that location. It makes you want to go to a certain area. We can break pull factors down into 4 main categories: economic pull factors, political, cultural, and also environmental. Our first category is economic pull factors, and this one is the most powerful at moving people. For here, people always want to move to areas with opportunity, and so they will go to areas with more economic opportunity. Places that have poor economic conditions are more likely to push people out.
So yeah,
Yeah, bro.
I mean, it totally makes sense. He's right. The names are pretty self-explanatory.
Right. The one thing about economic that I think is kind of interesting, in my opinion, and as we'll discover through some more clips in this episode, it's not so much a pull factor in other places. like they say, oh, the taxes are lower there, right? But it's really a push. The reason for leaving, you're being pushed out.
Yeah, but the taxes are too high here.
Well, they say that, but really it's cost of living.
Yeah.
The economic factors, taxes, cost of living, broadly speaking, cost of housing in particular, are the real reasons people are leaving. And so there might be like, oh, I'm going to Texas because land is cheaper or housing is cheaper, right?
Right.
Or I'm going to Nevada because housing is cheaper. But like when he says, oh, people are seeking economic opportunity, like California probably has more economic opportunity than most places. Like,
Yeah, I
we
mean,
have the largest economy by GDP. Like, we have a large population. It's a super diverse population. And much of the reason that the population hasn't declined more precipitously is because there are still a lot of people moving into California, many of them from internationally, right? So we have a lot of migrants coming in here because there's economic opportunity. You have people who have lived here, many of them boomers, many of them nearing retirement age or at retirement age, where they're going to be on a fixed income, where they can take the wealth they've established through buying a house 30 years ago when you could buy a house and turn around to sell it if you can find, usually to a bank or something, right? Because most people can't afford housing. And then they'll move to some place where housing is cheaper so that and then they'll have like a little bit of equity money and they'll have their fixed income, social security or whatever, and they can live much cheaper. That's not really a pull factor. That's more of like a cultural factor.
mhm.
He listed economic, political, cultural, environmental. But
Yeah, those are all under the
realistically,
poll.
yeah, that would, sorry, one more time.
You have those under the poll umbrella, those 4 reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that might pull someone to someone else, but it's not because of economic opportunity. It's because of their economic circumstances. But I certainly wouldn't use opportunity. People aren't running to fucking Las Vegas, Nevada because they're going to be able to like realize their entrepreneurial spirit or anything. They're going there because fucking it's cheaper to live.
Right. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is ironic that it's cheaper to live in a place where there were very few human inhabitants prior to the industrial age.
Yeah, it's basically an artificial oasis.
It's subsidized. It's 100%
Yeah.
subsidized by actually productive places.
Yeah.
Because they can't grow their own food. They can't even produce their own water. They have to fucking pump it via canal or pipe from some other place, or groundwater, right? Deep groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really nothing there. I mean, some light manufacturing maybe, and then the rest of it's like gaming. Like the whole economy is built on tourism, which is why like
Right.
Nevada always gets fucking hammered anytime there's kind of some national recession.
It's not even it's all the same type too. It's all gambling and shows. Like, there's no ecotourism to speak of. Like, nobody goes there for the beautiful shrubs.
Well, and do you know why that
Tumbleweeds.
might be? Because there are, I mean, I like the desert. The Great Basin's fucking cool. There's all sorts of cool shit out there to like.
Yeah, I
It's
think
kind
most
of
people like green.
well, no, I think there's people that like deserts, but the problem with Nevada is that like, bro, I'd be interested to see a map. I think like a whole middle section of the entire fucking state
Mhm.
is military range. So like
Mm.
it's public land, but it's not accessible to the public. There's like a naval air station in the north, and I think there's a bunch of bombing and training ranges out there.
Yeah, there's Area 51.
Yeah.
There are
That's way in
definitely
the south though.
Yeah, there have definitely been bases where they did like nuclear testing a long time ago, and
Yep.
and you
The
poison
Nevada test site.
the people. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. There's freaking. Let's do. There we go. Yeah, there's this many bases, just that are listed, and how many more that they probably don't talk about.
Yeah, and it's not just the bases, but like if you actually look at the land, like that whole middle section under where the word Nevada is,
Hmm.
I think from more or less Area 51, which is just like northeast of Las Vegas, I think. Like most of the whole center part of that state is like bombing range, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
And so like unlike Utah, where there are also a lot of military installations, but much of Utah, it's also terrain too, right? Like Utah has like um Dinosaur National Monument, the Ute Mountains in the north. There's some like wild rivers, and then they also have like the canyon country and shit. So
Hmm.
like Arches National Park and all that shit. Um, and so maybe they have a little bit more tourism just based on like geographic features, right?
Yeah, Nevada's
Um,
pretty flat, like once you get away from the Sierra. And
yeah, there's some kind of buckling and other stuff across the southern
it's
part. But you're right. But I think
pretty boring.
largely, yeah, there's not a lot out there, and there's not wild rivers or deep, beautiful canyons in quite
Right.
the same concentration as Utah. So, at any rate,
Fewer Mormons, though.
let's play another clip.
Yeah.
People are moving here, especially from California, because here you can get stuff for a lot cheaper, homes are bigger, and then of course, no state income tax.
3/4 of all counties in the country saw their population go down. For the second year in a row, California's population is shrinking.
California's population is going down for 2 years in a row.
More than 117,000 Californians packed their bags and said a permanent goodbye to the Golden State.
While the U.S. population was up 0.4% in 2022, California's went down. And California also has the highest state income tax in the country. But where are people going?
Been many, many thousands of California refugees coming in for the cost of living.
Many are flocking to Texas, Florida, and Nevada.
I live in this beautiful house with an acre of land. I've got a beautiful pool and a spa. There's no way I'd be able to afford anything like that in California, like at all. Probably be in a small little apartment or something, you know.
People move here for bigger homes, lower taxes, and the weather is not so bad.
It made like good financial sense for me to move out here.
It made financial sense. That's not the same as moving somewhere for economic opportunity. This isn't Irish people fleeing famine and coming to New York to remake themselves, right? This is a dude that's like, I can either live in an apartment in this city or I can move outside of Las Vegas, which is only like 4 hours away by car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like do like a 10-minute, and it's going to be connected via train too into Los Angeles soon. Like, he's like, I can move out there and I can have a big ass house on an acre with a swimming pool and all that shit. So, you know.
Yeah, and that is certainly appealing. You know, for the same price, you can get like a quarter-acre lot here. You know, you can move to some of these other states and have like basically your own personal forest.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a mixed bag too,
It is.
right?
Yeah, a lot of the places where it is incredibly cheap is because there is no economic opportunity. There are no services to speak of. You know, you'll get electricity, but like, you know, your nearest store is probably far away. It's not going to be a whole lot of selection because they're not serving a whole lot of people. So, like, if you are the typical American and accustomed to out of season vegetables, you will not find them at a good price. And so you're just stuck with whatever's in season for your area. I mean, there's a lot of downsides, you know, to living in a less populated area or, you know, living in a equally populated area where there are no support services.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, for him, that's what he wanted, right? Like he had this idea. He probably has a job that allowed him to move.
Yep.
Coming back to this short that we watched earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, the population over the last decade has declined by 3 million. I could not find anything that said that.
Right.
and maybe it's because the way you phrase it, 3 million people have moved away from California, but like our net migration has only been negative, like literally the last year in the data I found.
And it was only about 300,000 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you think it was less than 0.2% of the population, not quite an exodus. But you know, clickbait and stuff.
Well, yeah, and then on usafacts.org, they say that California's population increased 10 out of the 11 years between 2010 and 2021, with a largest annual population growth of 0.9%. There was a 0.7% drop in between 2020 and 2021. So an average increase followed by a slightly steeper, decrease, and suddenly the world's ending, apparently.
Yeah, and what they're doing is because it fits their political narrative, right? And
Yeah.
there is that political push and pull factors. We already described people we know who are using that, citing that as a reason. I personally think that it takes a back seat way in the back of the bus from economic factors,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you look at, the numbers for a very short period of time, I could see where you'd be like, oh, it's shrinking. It's like, yeah, for like 2 years. But I mean, overall, the 10 years prior to that, it increased by, 3% or whatever. And now it's going down by 0.5%. Like, that's still an overall gain. And that mentality of worrying so much about population growth kind of feeds back into the capitalist growth, where it's like, oh, if you're not growing, you're failing.
No, 100%, right? And we'll get into more of this in later clips, so we don't need to start beating the horse now. We have plenty of time to do it later. But like,
I'm gonna get that.
what happened between 2020 and 2021?
I think there was I think people played sports, drank beer. Oh, and there's a pandemic.
There was a pandemic, and there was a lot of people who had been working in tech that was a good reason to leave.
Oh yeah, it was
And
probably their first opportunity to leave. I have to imagine a lot of people that lived in Silicon Valley and like the Bay Area probably didn't want to live there. That's where the jobs were, and then they were told you can have your job anywhere you like, and they were like, "Fuck yes, I've been wanting to get out of here for a while." I mean, like, I would never want to live in the Bay Area. If you've never been to San Francisco, just don't go. And if you do,
go visit San Francisco.
Well, yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is like park your car in like Paris, California, or something like that. One of the BART station towns, and then take the BART, or take the BART in and take the BART back out. Do not try to drive into that place. It's fucking hell on earth. It is the worst I've had, and I've been to like Chicago. I've been to fucking New York City.
Traffic does get cited as a reason by some people, but that kind of fits into a whole cluster of other things.
Yeah,
I think you're correct. And people wanting to leave is that they're finally free to, right? Like, oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
now I finally have permission to not show up to that one weekly meeting in the office, right?
It could have been an email.
And realistically, like the cost of living has been so high here for my entire life. Like, it's never really been affordable, but really, especially since reaching adulthood, right? Like with the tech boom in the early 2000s, and that went bust, and there was kind of like a reshuffling, and tech consolidated, and then you had like the housing boom that led into 2008 that just like made it impossible to get a house. My neighbors bought their house in same size lot. I think it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, no garage, but like a 2-car carport.
Mm-hmm.
And he bought his in 1999 for $120,000.
Mm-hmm.
I bought mine very inexpensively 16 years later, for like 370.
Yeah, so triple the price, more than triple the price.
Yeah, triple the price in 15 years.
You also have one extra bedroom, though.
I do have an extra bedroom and a garage.
Ooh.
And I consider myself fortunate because 370 then. I'm sorry, I said 370. I bought it for 270.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, not 3 times the price.
Okay.
And even then, like way cheaper than most anybody else could find housing at that time, and now still. Like I consider myself quite lucky.
Yeah. Well, we've been looking in the areas surrounding Fresno because, like, really, there's nothing binding us to the city itself. Like, neither of us have jobs where you absolutely have to be in the city. And so we're just like, okay, what about all these little like podunk towns that are surrounding Fresno? You know, do they have anything to offer? And the answer is no, because everybody already thought of that.
Well, and because housing is a market, right? Like the same thing when housing, people in the city say that all the time. They're like, oh, you know, we want to bring up all these people that have tech jobs and can work from home because they have more income to spend in our businesses so we can prosper, while displacing people and whining about the homelessness issue. And then they're like, oh, the homeless people are coming from the Bay Area. And it's like, some of them are coming from here and some of them are absolutely coming from the Bay Area. I've met a lot of people who were from the Bay Area or from like the Sacramento area that came to Chico because it was affordable. But like, you can't control the regional housing market unless we start putting walls around our cities. Like, we have to find some solution to it because we can't change housing policy in San Jose, right? And in Santa Clara County. What we can do is control housing policy here in Chico and in Butte County, right?
Yeah.
So at any rate, yeah, it's just when you have a regional housing market like that, like you're saying, a little town that's 20-minute drive outside of the city, like, is going to have the same similarly priced homes and a lot fewer amenities.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what it boils down to is like there are some of these towns that are like, okay, cool, you know, they already have basically an aging population and a lot of people on fixed incomes. So you go to somewhere like Selma, shot fired at Selma. They have, you know, they have the big stores, Walmart and Targets and stuff like that, but like not much else because the people that live there need really, really inexpensive everything.
Yeah.
You know,
well, you mentioned age too, and that's another part. Like the baby boomers, because of COVID, right? But also before, not because of COVID, but just demographically, baby boomers flocked to fucking California, right? They flocked to people came to California in the late 60s or in through the 70s because there was a lot of economic opportunity and cultural pull factors. People wanted to be going to beaches. People wanted to participate in that. And a lot of that's probably because the way that Hollywood portrayed it.
Yeah.
Right. But then you also kind of had like a subculture of kind of like pretty radical political idealism, right? Well, people that came here are now getting old. Right, I had mentioned wanting to move somewhere where it's cheaper to retire on a fixed income. That's a huge part of it too, and they're also dying. Like the World War II generation is almost all gone, and World War II brought a lot of people to California too. Right,
I was shocked to find out that there are still World War II veterans alive. I was just like, what? It was for fucking ever. It was forever ago. They're all in their 90s.
Yeah, for sure. It was a while back. Yeah.
Well, like, I'm sorry, I don't really think that, like, I don't think of people actually living into their 90s. Like, I know it happens. I know people make it into their hundreds and all, but then, like, I watch people drop dead at, like, 65. And for me, that's more normal than people making it, like, very far into their 70s or, you know, with great circumstances, they might make it into their 80s. I guess I've just gotten so used to and been hanging around, you know, the poorer crowd that can't afford good medicine and all that. And so people are like fucking dropping dead before they even retire.
Yep. That's why it said average life expectancy, right? Like a lot of people die before, some people die after.
Yeah.
At any rate, so there is that also aging population that I have yet to see discussed in all of this. Every once in a while say, oh, people want to retire somewhere else, right?
Right.
And Florida is has been a retirement destination for people since the New York Jew was invented. When was that? Like back in the early 1900s or whatever? Like,
I wonder if they have, you know, metaflora or whatever. Like we have Medi-Cal, they have Metaflor. I wonder how many of these people that are moving there are going to be like, oh yeah, lower prices, blah blah blah. Now I need some medical care. Oh fuck.
No, they're covered under federal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why they just get everything, right? They get Social Security, they get Medicaid, Medicare, or whatever.
By the time we're old enough, they'll strip all that away,
and it'll be gone.
Yeah.
It won't exist for us, for sure.
Yeah.
I actually just watched a video the other day. I'll share it with you because it might be fun to do a breakdown. I don't necessarily love the guy a lot. I forget the name of his channel, but I was watching one. It's like video titled "How the Baby Boomers Destroyed American Society" or something like that.
Yeah,
it was fucking great. At any rate, let's continue. I just wanted to point out that demographic thing that often goes unsaid, which is a huge part. Is it like California's population exploded, and imagine that now those people that caused the population that all moved here are all dying, or many of them are dying. People are obviously still leaving the state, right? Because we can look at how many are born, how many die, and then how many are moving in, how many are moving out, and then that gives us our net migration, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But there is a big factor of retirees wanting to move out. And it's not because of cost of housing in terms of like, oh my God, I can't afford housing. No, it's much more like, oh my God, I did absolutely nothing. And all of a sudden I have this asset worth $500,000.
Oh yeah. And I definitely know people who are older and who are saying like, I'm going to sell my house in California that I paid next to nothing for, often sub $100,000. And I'm going to sell it for, like you're saying, $500,000. Like there are people that like bought their like Bay Area or coastal houses for nothing. And now 40, 50 years later, they're like, I'm going to sell it for $1 million and I'm going to move to Idaho, or I'm going to move to wherever it's cheap. Basically, a lot of people are like, I'll just live wherever it's cheap. I don't really care where. And you can live off that. Like, if you're in your like late 60s, that $1 million, and then you buy another house somewhere, or somewhere else for 200,000, you just got $800,000 to live off of. That's a big factor.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. And that's what a lot of people decided to do and have been deciding to do for a while now. Yeah. As they retire, they're like, okay, I just bought a house because that was the thing to do. And I worked my working years. Now I'm retiring and my kids grew up and they moved out and moved to other places or started families. And we don't need this house that's big enough to raise a family.
Yeah. And a lot of kids don't want the house too. I mean, like, I don't know about your parents' house, but like, my parents, I don't want to live where they live. I don't want the house that they have, like were they to die. So I'd sell it
out in Elsinore.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I wouldn't want to live down there like that.
I tried to convince my parents recently. I was like, y'all, if you guys are talking about selling your house, like consider, and you want to get more lands, like you can kind of just have more space to walk around and shit. And you don't need as much like house. It's like just stay where you can actually make a legacy. But they're boomers, so they don't give a fuck, dude. They're gonna like take everything that was handed to them and they're going to use it all up and give shit to my sister and I.
Yeah.
That's our expectation, at least. But no, we have no interest. My sister mentioned it, which is like, oh, you wouldn't want to keep mom and dad's place? I was like, I don't got no fucking reason to go there.
Yeah.
I have no nostalgia for where I grew up.
Yeah, it takes forever to get there and, and then get back into town to buy things and all that. And yeah, it's like, so many people have these houses that were good for raising their kids, but then like their kids are like, I don't want to live in that town, or I don't want that house, or whatever. Yeah. Assuming that the house is even livable.
Right. Let's carry on.
There are 8 states that have no state personal income tax, and they also happen to be amongst the fastest growing states in the country.
And people have become more price sensitive. I mean, the US had highest rate of inflation in 40 years.
So that $13,000 could go especially far when you're watching your budget more than ever before. Oh, and not to mention, California is the second most expensive state to buy a home in after Hawaii. This is Jason. His dream is to live in California, but upon crunching the numbers, years, he tells me it just doesn't make much sense. So he looked at Florida, Texas, and ultimately settled on here in Nevada.
Basically, you could get the same housing for $1,500 here that would cost you $3,000 or more in California.
The pandemic has shifted things dramatically in the workforce. See, in the past, you may move to California for a lucrative job in tech, Hollywood, or finance that pays better than other states. But fast forward to post-pandemic times, and 1 in 4 Americans are fully remote workers, while almost 90% have flexible options of where they work. Nevada is one of the fastest growing states. One survey found that 2 in 3 businesses have left California because of lower cost states, and Las Vegas is the top destination for them.
A lot of people moving from Northern California and Southern California, really just for the price of living, cost of living, which I have seen just in the last 3 years go up significantly. Obviously, you can blame the pandemic for some of that, but I really think migration of so many people coming in from California.
But
I heard that too. I am subscribed to the main subreddit, and like every few days you'll see a post about like all these people from away, like causing our prices to go up. I can't save for a house, and it's like, dude, as someone from away, I can tell you like that's everywhere. And every time you think that you're closer to the goalpost gets pushed back.
Yeah, my favorite is, oh yeah, you can move to Texas. You're welcome to move here, but leave your politics in California.
Yeah.
As if like California is like just not like Texas at all, right? And that everybody that's moving there is like some kind of fucking like liberal or something.
Yeah.
Right. But more importantly, like human migrations happen all the time. Mexico tried to say, hey, you can move here, but you can't bring your slaves. And so they fucking fought the Mexicans so they could keep their slaves. That's Texas's history.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not making that shit up. They literally were like, no, we're bringing our slaves. And Mexico's like, no, you can come here. Just don't bring your economic and political ideology based on the oppression of a fucking racial caste, right? And they're like, fuck you. And then they fucking beat the Mexicans and were able to keep slavery for another while.
Yeah, that's what's funny. It only lasted for a little while longer, and then it went away anyway. But yeah.
As we discovered last week with the Texas Republic, 10 years it lasted.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so like I raised my finger at that one point because he's like, oh no, he wants to live in California.
Right.
So I was like, so is that really a pull factor drawing him to Nevada, or is it a push factor out of California? Because he literally said,
it's a deflection factor.
Live in California.
Yeah. That is a force push factor. He's trying to come towards California. Gets force pushed away. Ah!
Not force pull to cinematically break the lightsaber at the moment that the ship is split in two by the Holdo maneuver.
Nerd.
We're a Star Wars themed podcast. We may talk about the real world and politics all the fucking time, but we're still a Star Wars themed podcast.
That's very true. I should really watch.
It was my favorite moment. Visually gorgeous. Plus, get rid of that character. She doesn't need to be in the third movie. Fuck that character.
Who are you talking about?
The one with like I forget the actress's name. Holdo, whatever. Admiral Holdo.
Oh, the purple haired.
Yeah.
Isn't she like Carrie Fisher's daughter?
No, Carrie Fisher's daughter is one of the like lieutenants that's in scenes and has some lines, but doesn't otherwise really not in a lead or anything.
That whole movie with its like slow speed chase.
I actually saw a really great cut. This is like a far aside, and we do need to wrap in the next like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We started at 10 after.
We've been going for an hour and 3 minutes.
Perfect.
And that includes the lead in. Yeah.
But I did want to say I did see a nice matchup of like a chase in or a space battle in Rogue One versus space battle in which was the Battle of Scarif versus space battle in Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Obi-Wan Kenobi did the same thing where it's like a transport weaving like this with a Star Destroyer chasing it.
Yeah.
Instead of like the Battle of Scarif where like the destroyers come in and it was all exciting and shit.
Yeah.
Versus like Obi-Wan Kenobi is literally just like follow that ship, and it felt like The Venator class following the TANF 4 in A New Hope, right? Like,
listing lazily to the left.
Right. Or like you said in this one, where it was just a slow chase of some transports.
Yeah.
Which is just, but that didn't really bother me all that much.
Oh man. What bothered me is it was like, this is clearly not going to work. And so you need to like buy these ships time by sacrificing one of your ships. And they did it eventually, but they got to it so late that they'd already lost like half the ships. It's like, you should have done that an hour ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Especially the whole turnaround charge and split the ship open. Come on. If we knew that was a possibility, we should have been doing that from the beginning.
Yeah. A lot of people complain about that. They're like, it just like, there's no reason to even have fucking space battles. All you need is like a bunch of little like unmanned vehicles, right?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
You like
a
deploy,
big hunk of metal with a hyperdrive attached onto it, and a targeting computer, and boom. Yeah, like I have watched videos where it's like that ruined Star Wars, because this would be the most common tactic used, and you've never seen it used before, and all of a sudden they're using it, and you won't ever see it again. But it is the most successful tactic that you could ever use. So
because if you're going faster than light, like, or even near the speed of light, like, it wouldn't take a large object to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, not at all. Like, you would basically just tear through anything, and like, even if it has armor, doesn't matter. You're imparting so much energy, you're going to turn that armor molten. Star Wars.
All right, let's move to another clip.
Number 4, cost of living. We already looked at how real estate in California is hugely expensive and how this provides a high barrier to entry for the average.
I just want to like poke in right here because they're showing like coastal cities and blah, blah, blah. But if you want a rectangle built,
Yeah, like the homes of rich and famous and resorts and shit.
Yeah, but if you want to move into like a rectangle built in the 70s here, it's like $350,000 minimum.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to look at these, and all that stuff. Like, just a rectangle that used to be a starter home is now outside of the reach of most people. That's all I have.
100%.
Person. Let's face it, the everyday person can't go out and buy a house that's worth upwards of $600,000. But it's not just housing that's expensive. The cost of living in California is also incredibly high. That means that if you live here, you're paying more than the average person for things like meals out, groceries, and gas. In fact, California is ranked number 49 when it comes to cost of living, with only Massachusetts, Washington, D.C., and Hawaii being more expensive. According to data from SoFi, the average person will spend about $53,000 to live in California. That comes down to about $4,400 per month. The average Californian spends about $380 per month on utilities, $322 per month on groceries and food expenses, and anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 per year on transportation expenses. As if that's not enough, healthcare costs an average of $8,500 per year, and childcare about $900 to almost $1,800 per month per child.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to include that, even though we've talked about cost of living before. Everybody go to the show notes and check out that clip in particular. Yeah. What was the title of it?
This one in particular?
Yeah.
This is from Across the Globe, and it is called
the Globe is the
the alarming reasons everyone is leaving California.
Yeah, and so it's just like a bullet list or whatever, numbered list. But I really liked that one in particular. And before, they had talked about cost of housing and also the cost of and the quality of education, right? But in that particular clip, he really kind of lays it out like, okay, childcare, healthcare costs, and utility costs, and transportation. Holy shit, right? Transportation being the biggest one. And that has a lot to do with the fact that like California created suburbia and created automobile culture.
It is a very large state with a very large amount of space in between anything. Just taking myself to school is 3.5 miles each way. And I have to go there, come back, and then go later on to get the kid and come back. So it's 14 miles a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to do basic functions, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have effective, I mean, so like the Bay Area is connected with a regional rapid transit that works pretty well.
Mhm.
The city of San Francisco, San Jose, there are some connections. There's like municipal transport systems.
Right.
LA finally has a kind of like regional rail, right? And then there's there's bus systems that are networked across the region. But by and large, there is not really, because distances are so great and because like it'll only get you the bus stop. I had to walk 1.5 miles when I took the bus. I took the train from no, I got on a bus in the San Fernando Valley, rode it into a train connection on the Orange Line, then rode the Orange Line connected to, I think it's the Blue that goes down. Anyway, I rode the train system down into my grandpa's neighborhood, got on another bus, and that got me I walked from the train. So I could have taken a bus, but I would have had to wait like 30 minutes to get on a bus going the direction I needed to go. And then I would have been like a 5-minute walk. And I was like, I can walk from the fucking train station and it'll take me less than an hour. Like, and I'll wind up getting there maybe a little earlier than I would if I waited. Right.
Yeah.
But at least I'm moving in a direction and whatnot. So I decided to walk and, stop by and get a chicken thigh from El Pollo Loco because I'm in LA. Why not?
Well, it also doesn't help that, there's been a very successful campaign to make people afraid of public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean.
Yeah. And so I think that transportation cost is interesting, but it's one of those things too, right? Like people do cite traffic. Well, come on, man. Like you're like, oh, I want to live in like a super economically like vibrant area and I don't want to deal with other people.
Yeah.
Or right.
Doesn't work out.
Like, oh, the cost of housing is so expensive. And that's one of the reasons I want to leave. And the other reason is because there's so many homeless people. And it's like
hand in hand, people.
Yeah. But anyway, I do think that like laundry listing that out is true. I think I might have mentioned here or to you, and maybe I didn't because I get confused. But like I looked at getting childcare before my youngest started at the school. And I looked there's a childcare facility across the street that's packed.
Yeah.
I assume they have full enrollment because there's constantly people there. I think there's 4 or 5 people, full-time employees at this child daycare facility that's closed holidays, closed weekends. And it's open like, 7 to 6 or something like that.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah. At any rate, I looked at that one. It was going to be $1,200 per month per child. And I paid $700 at an in-home daycare. So it was $1,400 for 2 kids. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like, it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways for both parents to work outside the house unless they're bringing in, like, especially if you have more than one kid, right? Like, if you have 2 or 3 kids, let's say 2 kids that are under 7 years old or 6 years old or whatever it is when they can go to regular school. Like you'd have to make fucking take home pay after taxes like $4,500, $5,000 a month to justify grinding all goddamn day just to pay most of that to daycare. Go ahead, sorry.
I do not get how anyone who makes minimum wage has children. It like literally in my mind, I cannot comprehend how you make that work.
Let me explain.
Is slightly over $2,400 for a month's pay. And if you're talking about, sending them off to daycare and all that stuff, that takes up anywhere from a third to half of it. And in the past, you could at least, rely on family and friends to watch it. But nowadays, we're more fragmented than ever. And a lot of people don't live near family because, I couldn't stay near my family as there were no job opportunities. So I had to move. Now I've got job opportunities, but I need childcare. And it costs so much. I may as well move back to where I was, where my mom lives or whatever. So, so she can watch the kid and just take whatever job happens to be available.
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
I still don't get how people can afford kids.
They can't oftentimes.
5. Climate change. Another reason people are leaving California has to do with climate change. Californians are used to forest fires, but in recent years, things have gotten much, much worse. For starters, wildfire season is lasting longer, continuing into late fall and even winter. According to the Western Fire Chiefs Association, climate change means that wildfires are becoming bigger and more intense, which makes them harder to fight. 2020, for instance, saw 5 out of California's top 20 biggest wildfires ever in 1 year alone. That year, fires destroyed over 4.3 million acres of land, ruined 11,000 structures, and killed 33 people. And over the course of the past 5 years, 13 of California's 20 worst recorded wildfires occurred. These alone destroyed 40,000 structures, including homes and businesses. Number 6.
That's a big one for me. Like, there's no water here. And I don't like living somewhere where like water's not a guarantee.
Yeah, no, that's why I've been advocating, and we still need to have that conversation, but advocating moving out to the fucking Redwood Coast, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it's still gonna fucking rain.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. And that's such a big one for I didn't realize just how much rain is a part of what kind of, lifts my spirits in the winter, because other than that, it's just dreary and not great. But then I moved here and we didn't have any appreciable rain until this year. And
you're telling me.
Yeah, like just having that rain come down finally. Oh, so nice. So good for the spirits.
I'm just like, fuck. I haven't had an issue with peach leaf curl, which is like a fungal infection.
Yeah.
Pretty common one. And I always had it like a little bit, but like there wasn't enough of it to like stunt the tree.
Right.
And like now I need to spray copper, and I probably should have done it preventative, like before it budded.
Mm-hmm.
Being like, oh shit, it rained a lot. I should probably use some fungicides. And I don't like the idea of using fungicide, but like at the same time, like it won't kill the tree per se, but it'll weaken it enough for other things to kill it.
Yeah, there are some
like,
less harmful fungicides, but not a whole lot of them.
Most of the copper fungicides, like, and I wouldn't need to do like, I'm not doing like a huge area.
Right.
They're relatively have pretty high volatility, so they break down fairly fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just plan to brew a fungal recipe of compost tea, and then mix in like powder mycelia, like different strains of kind of garden fungi into the compost tea, and then use that as a drench for a number of weeks after my last copper spray, just to kind of make sure that any kind of drip or anything didn't too negatively impact my good stuff going on that I've worked really hard to develop.
Right.
But like, yeah, just seeing like various kinds of insects I haven't seen for a while, the fucking weeds. Like I had done a lot of work trying to reduce the seed bank. There was just so much water that any seed that had been there that hadn't sprouted fucking sprouted.
That surprised me. We had a great variety of weeds this year.
Yeah. I had lupins in the back, which I was like, I don't recall ever like putting lupins down in the back. There must have been latent seeds there that had just waited and waited and waited until there was enough fucking water.
We had these really cool ones where if you brush them or the wind blows strong enough, they explode outward in order to spread their seed. Yeah, fucking awesome.
I like spreading my seed. I don't get to do that too often anymore.
I know. You definitely shouldn't do it with the wind, though.
No, I fucking hate being old, bro. I just want to be a slut again.
That's got nothing to do with being old, sir.
True, touche. No, I mean, yeah, the
settle down.
Systems I have in place, it's better to maintain those. Yes. I'm not obligated. It doesn't really have to do with age. It more has to do with station. But yeah,
you're not an obligate monogamist.
Let's play 6.
Oh man.
6. Homelessness. If you watch the news at all, you probably already know that California is facing a massive homelessness crisis. If you haven't been following, here's a quick recap. As of January 2020, about 160,000 people experienced homelessness in California on any given day. But things haven't improved. They've gotten worse, a lot worse. Between 2020 and 2022, California's homeless population increased approximately 6%. Even worse, about 30% of all people in the U.S. who are homeless live in California. California's undertaken a lot of schemes to try and reduce homelessness. Some of these are more crazy than others. For instance, in 2019, San Francisco inserted retractable spikes on staircases and under bridges to try and stop homeless people from sleeping there. Others seem to be a bit more reasonable, like affordable housing being developed in Los Angeles. But despite these efforts, and seemingly no matter how much public officials try, the issue isn't getting better, and some Californians are leaving the state because of it.
Yeah, so
homelessness. Let's get going.
I don't know how many people are leaving the state because of it. I mean,
yeah, and obviously not the homeless people.
Right. And I just yeah, I'm gonna leave the state because there's so many goddamn homeless people. It's like, where are you gonna go where there's no homeless people? Because this isn't a fucking state problem. Yeah, we have more than other states. We also have a lot more fucking people here.
Yeah.
But go to any other fucking state and there's homeless people.
Well, and it doesn't help that the moment that, they get their lives headed in a direction, the police come in and crack their skulls, take their shit, burn it in a lot of instances, or, send it to a dump. Like that's been going on a few blocks from where I live. There's a large encampment, and they go in and they break it up every once in a while, and they say they're bagging their shit and giving it back to them, but no, they're not. And then in Oakland recently, they've been clearing out a very large encampment. I've been hearing about it on the news a lot, and there's video evidence of them just throwing shit away. Even though it is, and it's like, okay, that you just took someone who might have been on the verge of getting ahead, and you set them back to zero. That's so fucked up. And then in other places in the world, they're like, no, we're just going to make a shit ton of housing and you get a free house. It's an apartment, but like you get an apartment and you get to live in it until you die.
Yeah, I reject that idea that he said. He's like, oh, no matter how hard the politicians try, they haven't tried.
In fact, they haven't tried anything unique.
In fact, grassroots activists tried really hard 2 election cycles in a row to get a basic expansion of fucking rent control. And the second time they produced it, it was so goddamn watered down that it's like, this is not going to do anything really substantive to address the issue. And it failed anyway.
Yeah.
Because our fucking political system is bought by landlords and real estate interests and all these fucking boomers that are like, oh, well, if you do this, then like the house that my parents left me that I've been renting, I'm going to somehow like be in this position where like I'm going to be on the hook for all this money I don't have to do whatever, right? Like, or I'm not going to be able to draw equity out of that house. I won't be able to sell it or charge higher rent. And they freak the fuck out. And so it doesn't pass. And rent control is not the solution. Like we need to decommodify housing. And no politician has ever fucking floated that I'm aware of as a policy, or even if they did bring it up, I'm sure it never made it out of committee.
Oh yeah, I mean that would get shot down so quick because so many people are only able to continue their life and have a hope at retirement because they have property that they rent. Like you take that away, and then suddenly they're one of the people that are complaining about their politicians doing the wrong things. Yeah. And so it's not an easy thing to do by any means, but it's what's going to have to happen.
I tried to talk to my cousins about it because I actually called people I knew and went through like my email list and phone list to try and talk to people about things like that. I forget which proposition number at this point, but like they were like straight up no. And I was like, do you realize that this would not like it doesn't even force rent control on you. Like the city of Long Beach would still have to decide to pass rent control, and rent control was on your city ballot last cycle 2 years ago, and it failed.
Yeah.
So like, but they, of course, them and all of their friends who were kind of in that, oh yeah, we work really hard for what we have, and really like, yeah, they do work hard, but they also just kind of are gaming the system and have like support from family members and all that shit, you know, and they're like, no, us and our friends, we're going to vote against it because they, you know, our friends respect us and value us. And like, they don't want us to get hurt by this.
Right.
Even though a lot of their friends don't even fucking own a house, let alone own a rental. Right.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, no, they're going to vote. Cause like we're afraid of this because we don't understand this, even though I tried to explain it. And they're just like, nope. And her husband was like, I just don't like taxes at all. And I don't think the government should tell me how much I can rent my house for. But then there are also the people that are like, well, I need to give more, you know, we should spend more of our fucking public money on police to deal with this homeless crisis.
Right. Well,
people don't connect the fucking dots.
In the
They're
end,
not system thinkers. They're not.
No. And in the end, study after study shows that it's cheaper to just house the homeless than it is to deal with them constantly through the legal system, through policing and stuff like
medical expenses.
Yeah. Medical expenses. Like, you can cut the police force substantially if you just give homeless people homes, because now there's nothing to worry about. They don't feel like they have to go in there and do anything about a problem because the problem doesn't exist.
All right. We're not playing 7.
You're supposed to go for one more, I do believe.
Oh yeah, no, it's only a fraction of it though.
Yeah.
Number 7, work from home opportunities. When the pandemic struck, a lot of people switched to remote work. And with the opportunities for remote work, suddenly people weren't tied to one particular location. Among states with the most work from home workers, California ranked pretty high up. In fact, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose all ranked in the top 15 work-from-home cities in the entire country. In San Francisco, for instance, a whopping 46%, or nearly 1 in 2 residents, worked from home in 2020. That's a big increase from the 7% who worked from home in 2019. While some of these workers have likely returned to in-person work since then, a large number have not. And with opportunities to work outside of the state, some people have decided to take advantage of flexible remote work by turning their backs on high real estate prices and high income taxes and relocate to more affordable states. Number 8.
There we go.
Cool. Yeah, I think we were not even.
It went long.
Yep. No worries. Yeah, I think we just wanted to kind of preface it because it's so obvious that we don't really need to hear someone else say it.
Yeah.
And we've already kind of alluded to it. Like, so there's a lot of things, right? Like, there's a demographic issue with the boomers getting old and wanting to retire and maybe make their, and they have all this wealth accumulated through no effort of their own, by virtue of housing speculation and appreciation, right? And then you also have people working from home, like technological change that allows people to not have to be physically present, right? People aren't moving to Nevada because they want to fucking start a new business, or there's some big, flashy corporation that they want to advance their career by going to work there, right?
Yeah.
No, they're moving there because fucking housing is cheaper. Why is housing cheaper? Because there's nothing there.
Right.
So unless you work from home.
I mean, you can get like practically free land in some places, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, I thought there was like a town in, like a little farm town in Kansas or something. I want to say, or Indiana or something, that was like trying to incentivize people to move there because like they were having to like start like shipping kids like 45 minutes or an hour to a school because they had to close the schools because all the population got fucking old and none of the younger people stayed.
Right. And then like here, you have the Melrose taxes, and you have like whole planned urban developments that were created to avoid them. People are like, well, I don't have kids anymore. Why should I pay for school? And it's like, you numb-nutted motherfucker. I'll tell you why you should pay for school, because the crime rate goes down when people are more educated.
Yeah.
There you go. I solved it for you.
Yeah. And then there's more people making more money so that they can support your fucking pension check.
But exactly. Bigger tax rate,
but at any
and
rate,
so on.
There's a lot of things going on, and it is not as big of a deal as people are saying it is, which was the whole point in us wanting to talk about this. It's certainly not a woke agenda, right? And it's certainly not, homeless people or traffic by themselves, but what they represent, right? It's like we pay all this fucking money and I don't even like living here anymore. So go back up and let's hit each of these graphs. Can you scroll in a bit so we're getting mostly the graph?
Okay, yeah.
So here's our population change. Can you center it?
Yeah. There we go.
Good enough. Oh, wait, one more.
More what? There we go.
Graph's not centered. We need to see that last one.
Gotcha.
There you go. There's the population of California. Pretty stable, right?
Yep.
And increase of 316, increase of 308, increase of 309, increase of 332, increase of 317, increase of 244, then 189, then 99.
Yeah, it starts to drop off. Yeah.
And then only basically stayed the same and then declined in 2020.
Yeah.
So to say that is to show that it's not just the pandemic and remote work, but I think that this could easily be explained by people are just going to want to move. People perceive themselves as unhappy. Sometimes like people get divorced and they're like, oh, I want to move, where my, my cousin moved or whatever. We almost bought a dairy from a guy who was moving to Missouri. Of course he was just like, taxes, blah, blah, blah. What it was is that his son moved to where his wife's family is from and they had land and they wanted their like, we got nothing here left, but all of our kids moved out of state.
Yeah.
So we want to retire. We're going to move there so we can play with the grandbabies.
Yeah.
And yeah, they weren't, super happy here, but they're not exactly being driven out, right? No, they got to retirement age and they're like, what makes the most sense for us? And a lot of it was, we can buy a house cash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then retire on the equity.
I suspect my own mother will probably retire in Utah or Florida, depending upon which grandkids she likes better.
Yeah, if I had to say in that, I would definitely tell her to go to Utah.
Yeah, yeah.
Utah's also like aesthetically a lot more like where she lives now anyway, being in an empire.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's dry, desert, sagebrush, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I would highly recommend that over Florida. Plus, fuck Florida.
Mm-hmm.
In that clip we were watching, education was one of the first three, and they had mentioned how like California ranks like in the top third, but towards the bottom of the top third, and how like people are like, but we pay so much taxes. Why are our schools better? And they're like, in Florida's number 3 in the country for quality of education. And I was like, isn't Florida the one that bans books and tells like teachers that they're not allowed to fucking?
Oh yeah,
not allowed to share a picture of them with their same-sex partner because that would violate they have a higher quality of education in a place where like even the teachers are like, I feel like I'm under attack by the fucking state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever.
Well,
Sorry,
you just teach I was going to say, if you teach to the test, you can seem a lot smarter than you really are.
Yeah. Great. Can you also just zoom out like 1 or 2 clicks just so we can see the whole graph?
There you go.
Perfect. Yeah. So interesting. The West region is still growing. California's in the West region, but so is Washington, Nevada, right? Which are kind of higher growth areas. Idaho has had a lot of people move there. Again, cultural pull factors. People want to live in a place where they can buy fucking silencers or no, I'm not even joking.
No, I know you're not. I saw it as a reason in some of the stuff I was looking through. It's like, I want to be able to do whatever I want with my guns.
I've considered moving to Oregon because they're a little more lax on how they approach childhood vaccinations, and also because they're more lax on firearms. I've considered moving to Oregon.
They also no tax on items.
Oh, no sales tax?
No sales tax. Sales tax, yeah.
Yeah, and we have sales taxes, but most of that goes to local governments.
Yeah.
So our tax structure in California is fucked. And I'm not going to fucking tell someone that they're delusional if they say taxes are high.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that property taxes are not something that I think about very often. Yeah. Usually it's when there's a bond measure on the November ballot that's going to raise my property taxes. even more. That's when I complain about taxes.
Oh
Otherwise,
yeah. Well, I hate bond measures to begin with. Like, if you can't figure out how to pay for it now, why are you making it so someone else has to figure out how to pay for it later?
I'd be cool with bonds if we had public banks
Yeah, that's a
instead
good
of
point.
like paying back fucking Wall Street banks.
We could
Yeah.
have, we could have city banks and not CITI, but CITY banks. It's legal now,
Municipal
but
banks.
no one's made one.
Nope, California even has it legal, and I got tired of people. Hey, wait.
Sorry.
I got tired of people telling us that we just need public banks, and then it's like California has public banks. Stop. You live in fucking Massachusetts. Stop telling me what works and what doesn't. I'm telling you, we have public banks in law, and there's no public banks.
Yeah.
Because you can make a law to make a public bank, and unless capitalists want to fucking put deposits down to provide the seed money, then it doesn't matter what it says on the books. Like, that's not how the fucking financial system works. Anyway, I did want to point out Northwest region or Northeast region and Midwest region also declining. So for California to be the one that's plastered all over the news,
right,
as being this like failed experiment in communism is just fucking outrageous to me.
Yeah.
Like, the other regions are losing population. People are moving around for a lot of different reasons. The South, as you can see, is growing. The South also happens to be the most violent place in the fucking country. Me looking at crime statistics.
Yep.
Like, violent crimes are fucking way more common in the South. Legacy of slavery, legacy of fucking and consequence of poverty, right? Like, of course. But people are moving there because it's fucking cheap. Why is it cheap? Because everybody's fucking broke.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, sorry, scroll on. I just wanted to point out that California is not alone in this. Look at 10 fastest growing states.
Yep. And this got touched on in some of the videos, but Texas, Florida, obviously, Arizona, yep. North Carolina must have something going on with business taxes or something like that. Because I know a bunch of YouTubers recently moved there from the Los Angeles area.
Asheville is kind of like Austin or Portland. It's weird, and it's like gentrifying, and there's a lot of tech moving there.
Dust Bowl Brewing and Sierra Nevada both have businesses out there. So I'm like, there must be something that is drawing these businesses.
I think, and there could also be an environment. See, in the pull to California for a lot of people has been environment. Like, California's fucking gorgeous, dude. It's got a ton of problems, but like, you can be in the lowest spot and the highest spot in the lower 48, like within a few hours. You can be in the redwoods. You can be in fucking world-class skiing. You can be on surf beaches, right? You can be near big, beautiful rivers in the richest agricultural region in the country, like all within a day. But like North Carolina, also very beautiful. So
yes.
And it's somewhat cheaper, but it's not really. If you go into fucking encourage anybody to jump on Zillow, it's going to be cheaper than California, but everywhere but Hawaii is cheaper than California, right?
Yeah.
But then you look at it and you're like, okay, what is the cost of moving? What are my wages going to be?
Yeah.
What is the fucking minimum wage in North Carolina? Is it set to the federal at $7.25?
I believe it is. And not only that, but you mentioned it very briefly. The cost of moving is tremendously high if you have any amount of shit. Like, if you're thinking about moving out of state, to where you would have to drive or pay a moving service, spend a good year going through all the shit you have and deciding what really matters. Because you're going to save a lot of money if you don't have to ship 2 or 3 rooms worth of stuff, but only 1 or 2.
Yeah, and Texas and Florida, I think, are cultural creations. I think that the way that social media and other things, they're kind of built Texas and California as the bastions of conservatism. So I think a lot of people who live in a place where they don't feel like they belong, because we're like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have you violate the constitutional protections against cruel and unusual punishment by releasing people from jail. And then people here are for nonviolent drug offenses, right? And people here are but they're black and brown. Fuck that. You're fucking putting criminals on the street, right? And they don't believe in justice. Not that the state of California does either. That was the courts that fucking made that happen. But my point is that like, I think that they just kind of are put on a pedestal in like conservative idea space.
Right.
And that has a lot to do with people moving there.
Well, and we'll see in a while, because right now you have a bunch of businesses moving there to take advantage of virtually non-existent taxes. And we'll see if that is a sustainable thing in about 15 or 20 years, I think.
Yeah, I think that Texas is in the process of like exploiting a lot of fucking oil and shit too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of oil related jobs.
Surprising amount of wind related jobs.
There are
as well.
some too.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are moving there are moving, but like Austin is like any city here. Like it's not affordable. People who've lived there forever, like there's a ton of homeless people. Like, but there is kind of like a gentrification / tech kind of boom going on there as well.
Yeah.
And so why are people moving to Texas? Why do people choose to move to Texas? I don't know. Maybe like in the grand scheme of things, like California has the highest income tax rate. One of those videos said, I didn't bring it up. It has the highest rate. It's like, oh, your tax rate's 13.8% for income tax rate.
Right.
No, that's only people that make over $1 million. The vast majority of us pay 4 to 6%, depending on where we fall in the bracket, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, 4 to 6. Well, Texas doesn't have a state income tax. Well, cool story, bro. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, that's great. But like, I'm not so concerned with the 4% of my income that I give to the state of California that provides for like CAL FIRE and like, road safety and programs to fucking make billboard ads at bus stops that fucking tell kids not to smoke or whatever it is, right? Like,
or, making sure that, you can take companies to task when they burn down entire city or towns rather.
Right. Exactly. And I'm not saying that, not saying it's perfect. There's all sorts of fucking failures.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that like, you're like, oh, cool, there's no state income tax. I'm much more concerned about the 30% in taxes I give to the federal government,
right?
The vast majority of which goes to places like Arizona, South Carolina, Tennessee,
Ukraine,
the military-industrial complex.
Military-industrial complex
of every fucking dollar that you pay in federal taxes goes to the fucking war machine. And they're like, oh, I'm leaving California because the taxes are too damn high. It's like, California takes 4% of your fucking income, plus you get to write off a bunch of shit like that you can't write off on your federal taxes, and vice versa. There's things you can write off on federal you can't for the state of California. But generally speaking, grand scheme of things, is like, cool, I paid California like $1,200 in taxes. Am I really going to leave everything I'm familiar with, leave the land that I love to move to Texas or to South Carolina because I want to save $1,200 a year in taxes?
Quickest way to save a bunch of money, bottom line, is to get the government to enact universal health care. That would save you so much more money than paying 9%, less in taxes.
Yeah, for sure.
So get on that, everyone.
And no shade on Texas, but I just don't see it being viable long term.
Literally no shade. There's very few trees.
Yeah. There is in the East, but like it is not politically, it's not the reason.
Yeah.
Culturally, maybe a little political and culturally, but certainly to me, like there's not that much economic opportunity there. I remember my aunt and uncle, if you recall this, my sister might, because we were having a conversation, and they were both like, oh, you voted for Obama because you don't have a real job or you just like paying lots of taxes, right? It's always,
hey, if I didn't have a real job, what would I be paying taxes on?
Right. And the funny thing is like, wait, one of you is employed by NASA, which really hasn't done fucking anything in decades, but somehow still has payroll, right? And the other of you work for the city of fucking Houston. So you both work for government.
Yeah.
Like your government's the only reason that you can fucking buy a house in a bigger truck and a big boat, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And have all your fucking toys. The only reason is because of government. And then you're like, you vote for people who like government.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
just
yeah,
hit
all the people that talk about small government mean small government that helps other people that aren't them.
yeah. When people say we don't like government, I don't want to just boil it down purely to code words saying we don't like black and brown people, but
Yeah,
it has a lot to do with that.
it's there. It's there.
It's racist for sure. Here, 10 fastest growing states. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Let's see.
As a percentage, right?
Fastest losing states.
These is the one I find. These are the ones I wanted to focus on. I think this is our last bit, right? And we're done.
Yeah. I mean, there's one more, but we can do this one.
10 fastest losing states. California is third. Right?
Yeah.
But then scroll down, 10 fastest losing as a percentage.
Yep.
It's 10.
Boop. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look at big numbers and you live in a state that has big numbers, of course it's going to seem massive, when you lose, what is this, 70,000 people. Yeah, that sounds big, but we got fucking millions of people. Tens of millions of people here.
Our population was approaching 40 million. We are more than 10% of the population of the United States lives in California.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's nice.
In fact, California's population is larger than many European countries.
Oh, yeah.
And our economy is larger than many European countries, which is why I keep saying, and we're going to have to do a show on it, or like a balkanization part two.
Part two, yeah.
We mentioned doing. I have been looking through California maps. It'll be a fun exercise. What I need to do is mark it up, but I've been marking up like according to the criteria that were laid out in that episode about like it has to be defensive, it has to be, all these things, and like marking it out and being like, how could we fucking do this and make this happen? But realistically, like California could be its own country easily, hands down, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see what else we got.
I think that's the last of the graphs.
Yeah, I wanted that.
Nope. I just wanted to look at those to kind of show folks that, like, again, it's part of the media narrative, right? Like, it's part of saying, see the failure of fucking crazy liberals that vote for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Right? Look at how awful it is. But when you put it in context, you're like, oh, like as a percent of population, it's not actually hemorrhaging bodies like you said it is. Right. And if you give a lot of reasons, it's not for a lot of the reasons that people say it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or they're presenting a partial truth, right? Like, oh, we're leaving because of homelessness. Or maybe you're leaving because the cost of housing is too high and therefore many people can't afford housing. Right?
Right. And are as such homeless. Yeah. Precisely.
Cool. Solid majorities view crime as a problem. You know what? This I think was kind of part of it.
This is a good study in people believing what they hear uncritically.
Right. I've gone through a lot of crime statistics, as I mentioned earlier, because I want to do this. I think this might fit to another episode because we're at past time anyway. I think. Right. Yeah, we're way past time.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in general, people always seem to think there's a lot more crime than there really is because that's what gets on the news is crime.
If it bleeds, it leads, right?
Yeah. Like we don't even get the happy squirrel on the fucking, jet or not jet ski, on water skis anymore. We're not even allowed to have a moment of happiness.
Yeah, so we should definitely talk about crime, and we're going to talk a little bit more about American balkanization. I'm a big fan of California independence. I think we should be our own country.
Fuck yeah.
And I think that we should make our own rules, and we should rewrite our constitution to be much more democratic. And that's a risk too, right? Some things that I like the ability to own a semi-automatic weapon, might go away if we all sit down and have a conversation because there's some serious cultural misunderstandings going on. And you know what? If we could have more autonomy over how we run ourselves, if we imagine California, like, oh, California's got so much income tax. Imagine if its income tax was in lieu of federal income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because most of our income tax is a subsidy for other fucking states that don't have this robust of economies and don't have as high of family incomes.
Yep.
Taxable incomes.
Yeah.
Right?
We
are
subsidizing the Rust Belt.
The rest of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, in varying to varying degrees, not directly, right? But like we pay more in federal taxes as as citizens or whatever, as taxpayers, California taxpayers pay more in taxes to the federal government than it receives in payments from the federal government.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have a positive net tax versus a lot of states which have a negative tax. We're subsidizing those folks. And if we didn't have to do that, then we wouldn't have to tax as much. And instead of having like a gigantic bloated military that's like adventuring around the world, we could have a really robust like civil defense force. With, I would say, you know, we'll have to do an episode kind of going over speculative fiction kind of futuristic bullshit, right?
Defending California.
No, I mean, seriously, like, what would we do? We'd have to defend some beaches. Fortunately, most of California is actually fucking not landable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, our coast is pretty fucking secure. Plus, on the other side, where you got fucking mountains.
Yeah.
That's pretty
come that way. All you got to do is, I think it's the 40, you know, heading out in the south, and you know, the 101, or no, not the 101.
And
the
there's
I-80.
a whole fucking desert there.
Yeah.
Right? Which means
you'd have to get through fucking Nevada first.
We would need to try and be able to bomb supply lines if someone wanted to come from Nevada over through the desert or over the mountains. Realistically speaking, though, we would have everything we need. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Water. There's a lot of rivers. Most of the rain that falls on California stays in California. I don't think
Southern California might dry up a bit.
The Klamath, I think, might go north into Oregon and then hit the ocean, the Pacific Ocean through Oregon. But I think that might be the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And the Colorado like passes through part of California.
Yeah.
Not even. I don't think it does. I think it makes up
It is the border
easternmost border. Yeah.
Yes. It's the border with Arizona.
We just take a lot of fucking water out of it.
We do. That would be something that would have to be discussed. Is how would you keep that water now that it's an international issue? It's already bad relations.
The U.S. would do the same thing it's doing now, right? Like, they're not giving any of it to Mexico.
Yeah.
Right? Let's take it.
All right, now it doesn't make it to California. Bottle it up.
Yeah,
call in Nestle. They'll take care of it.
We just find other solutions, right? Like perhaps desalination. I don't think that that's viable. Also, just changing habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the water that's consumed is just like most of the food that's grown in this country. It's fucking wasted. Mm-hmm. It's not utilized. So having a more efficient distribution system would go a really long way.
Absolutely.
Like mandating, like in Arizona, they mandate apartment complexes have no more than 10% of their landscaped area be turf. You're not allowed to grow grass for dogs to shit on or kids to play on or however you want to do it.
Grass actually doesn't work very well for dogs to shit on. You want clover for that. It can take all the ammonia you can throw at it.
Yeah, but my point is just that like they have rules also where like they're required to businesses, commercial buildings, including commercial residential apartment buildings, are required to capture enough water to water their landscaping.
Mm. Okay.
So they're still shipping in water for people to drink, and they're not utilizing gray water properly. But at least they've managed the landscaping aspect. Whereas California, we don't like it's fucking Dianne Feinstein, that senile piece of shit. Who now people are like, you need to resign because like you're literally like a corpse. And again, boomers, right? Like our Pelosi and fucking Feinstein and Joe Biden, they're all fucking senile. They all have no fucking clue what they're doing, and they live in a world that no longer exists.
Yeah.
And we wonder why we can't solve fucking problems. It's because the people who are in a position to solve the problems don't understand that the problems exist or why they exist. Because they're so fucking out of touch, both generationally, right? Out of touch, but also in terms of being so much wealthier than everybody else. Right. And we have problems because of disparities like that in our political system and our economic system. And that's what we do here on this podcast, is talk about those things, because when liberty dies, it dies
with thunderous applause.
Wait.
What?
Wait.
What?
Wait. What was it?
What?
Remember, folks, safety first, shenanigans thereafter.
That works. Peace, y'all.
Peace.